All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to be talking about a really special type of verb in Arabic. It's the kind that needs not just one, but two targets to make its meaning complete. And, getting a handle on this is really the key to unlocking some of the most powerful and nuanced sentences you'll find in classical Arabic and the Quran.
So, here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the absolute basics of verbs, just to get warmed up. Then we'll jump into the main event, these verbs that need two targets. After that, we'll get into what happens when you flip these sentences into the passive voice. And we'll explore how just changing the word order can give a sentence a completely different feel. And finally, we'll see all of these rules playing out in the Quran itself. Okay, let's get into it.
First things first, before we can get to the really complex verbs, we have to start with the fundamental building blocks. It all kind of boils down to one simple question. Does the action of a verb stop with the person doing it, or does that action have to pass over to something or someone else? In Arabic, we call these lazim and muta'addi. A lazim verb, which is intransitive, is totally self-contained. He sat. The thought is complete. But a muta'addi verb, a transitive one, absolutely needs a target. If you just say, he hit, our brains immediately go, he hit what? The sentence feels broken. Now, for what we're doing today, we're going to zero in on a really special group of these muta'addi verbs, the ones that need even more than one target to make sense.
All right, this brings us to the main topic. We're now looking at this special class of verbs where even having one target, one object, just isn't enough to complete the thought. They actually need two.
So let me ask you this. What happens when a verb is describing a complex idea, like a judgment or a thought? It's not just a simple action affecting one thing, but it's about creating a relationship between two things. Let's actually build an example piece by piece.
Okay, so imagine we just say, Hasiba Hamidun. Hamid thought. You can feel it, right? The sentence just hangs there in the air. We instinctively ask, thought what? About who? It's a completely open loop.
Okay, so let's try adding one object. Hasiba Hamidun Mahmudan. Hamid thought Mahmud, well, we're a little closer, but we're still missing that critical piece of the puzzle. The most important question is still unanswered. He thought Mahmud was what?
And boom, there it is, the complete thought. Hasaba Hamidun Mahmudan aliman. Hamid thought Mahmud a scholar. Now it clicks. Now it makes perfect sense. The verb hasiba, to think or to consider, absolutely requires those two objects, Mahmud and a scholar, to give us the full picture.
Let's just break this down really quickly. You've got the verb, the fi'l, you've got the subject, Hamid, the fa'il, and then, and this is the key part, you have our two distinct targets, the first object, or Maf'ool Awwal, and the second object, the Maf'ool Thani, and both of them are absolutely essential for the sentence to mean anything. Okay, so we've got the active structure down. But what happens when we want to flip it around? When we want to focus on the person being thought about instead of the one doing the thinking? Well, this is where the passive voice, or majhul, comes into play. Transforming this sentence is actually a really clear 5-step process. First up, you change the verb to its passive form. Second, we get rid of the original subject, Hamid. He's out of the picture. Third, and this right here is the most important part, that first object, Mahmud, gets a promotion. He becomes what's called the naib al-fa'il, or the deputy subject. To show he has this new role, his case changes. And finally, that second object, a scholar, just stays put, exactly as it was.
And what you get is this. Hasiba Mahmudun aliman. Mahmud was thought to be a scholar. You see how that focus has completely shifted? The person who was doing the thinking is gone, and the first object has stepped right into the grammatical spotlight, while that second object is still there providing the essential information.
This stuff isn't just about ticking boxes to be grammatically correct. It's way more interesting than that. These rules are actual tools that speakers and writers use to create nuance, to create emphasis. And one of the most powerful ways to do that in Arabic is to be very deliberate about what you put at the very beginning of a sentence. So let's just look at this comparison. On the left, you've got your standard verbal sentence, a jumla fi'liya. It starts with the verb. Did you drink the milk? Simple, straightforward question. But now check out the right side. This is a nominal sentence, a jumla ismiya. Just by starting with the pronoun you, the whole feeling changes. It's not just asking if the milk was drunk, it's asking, was it you, specifically, who drank the milk? This adds a huge layer of emphasis, or ta'kid, because you're basically mentioning the subject twice.
Right, so this is where it all comes together. These aren't just dry academic rules. They are literally the architecture of meaning, especially when you're looking at profound texts like the Quran. Understanding them lets you see the deliberate, careful choices behind the words. Let's see this in action.
Let's look at this incredibly famous verse about fasting. Now, on the surface, it seems like a simple command, but grammatically, there's something really elegant going on under the hood that gives it its rhetorical power.
So the verb kutiba is passive. It was prescribed. And you have to ask, what was prescribed? Well, as-siyamu, the fasting. That is our deputy subject, our na'ibul fa'il. In a normal standard sentence, you'd expect to see that right after the verb.
But look closely. That's not the word order in the verse. By putting alaykum, upon you, before the deputy subject, it completely changes the emphasis. The structure places the focus squarely on you, the person receiving the command. It makes the message feel so much more direct and so much more personal.
All right, let's look at another one. This is a really powerful example. Notice that verb right at the start, duribat. It's passive, sure, but why is it feminine? What's going on there?
Well, the clue is in its na'ibul fa'il, its deputy subject. The subject is avillatu wal maskana, abasement and destitution. And since that subject is grammatically feminine, the verb has to agree with it. It's just another amazing layer of grammatical precision that you see all throughout the text. Our final example today is just an incredibly poignant one, and it brings a lot of what we've talked about together. The verse describes the day of judgment, when the young girl who's tragically buried alive will finally be asked a question. And this is where everything we've talked about, nominal sentences, passive voice, subject-verb agreement, it all clicks together to create this incredibly powerful statement. The sentence starts with the noun, al-ma'uda, which makes it an emphatic jumla ismiya. Then the verb that follows, su'ilat, she was asked, is both passive, because she is the one being acted upon, and feminine, to agree with its subject. The grammar itself is what constructs this scene of profound personal justice. All right, so let's just quickly recap the big takeaways. We've seen that some verbs just need two targets to make sense. We've also seen that when you make them passive, that first target gets a big promotion. And maybe most importantly, we've seen that sentence structure and word order are not random at all. They are incredibly powerful tools for creating emphasis, and understanding that is really the key to a deeper appreciation of classical Arabic. See, in the end, grammar isn't just some dusty set of rules to memorize, it's the blueprint, the very DNA of meaning. Now that you can see this structure, what new layers of meaning will you discover in the texts that you read? Thanks for watching.